Some of the world's top medical experts believe the ability to map genes will be instrumental in the future of healthcare. So, the so-called genomic sequencing has been crucial in the fight against coronavirus, and it's helping develop vaccines to protect against the disease. Illumina is one of the world's biggest companies dealing with genomic sequencing, and it saw the pandemic as an opportunity. For the first time, their technology would be used to inform decisions and actions taken by health authorities and governments in real time. Joining me now live is Illumina Chief Medical Officer Febbo, MD. Thanks so much for your time, Doctor. First of all, I'm going to start with a very dumb question. Can you explain genomic sequencing?
Well, thank you, Laura, and it's a pleasure to participate. Genomic sequencing is basically looking at and reading out the genetic code. And the genetic code is written in 4 letters, A, G, T's, and C's. And what our sequencers do in really rapid and at scale is read that genetic code. For SARS-CoV-2, the virus causing the COVID pandemic, there are 30,000 letters in the alphabet of its genetic code. For you and I, we have 3 billion letters. And sequencing is reading that code and then finding out how to interpret that and the implications of it.
Right, got it. That's a very good explanation indeed. So when we're talking about COVID-19, does it help you develop vaccines, or do you help vaccine developers? And can you also track quite quickly how the disease might be mutating?
Yeah, very good questions. And this pandemic has really demonstrated that we're in a fundamentally different place as a society with our access to sequencing. So within weeks of this group of respiratory infections occurring in Wuhan, investigators were using Illumina sequencers to sequence the virus, and they were able to identify it was a novel virus. It would belong to the coronavirus family. And they posted that full-length sequence on January 11th, 2020. Within 48 hours, Laura, Moderna, Pfizer started working on vaccines because they could take that sequence that was posted from China and print out the spike domain that they know from prior coronaviruses is what our body responds to, and start putting that into their vaccine. So before, we've never been able to move that quickly from a sequence to a vaccine. And it's really interesting that Moderna never had the virus in their lab. All they needed was that sequence, and they were off to the races.
Right, so before genomic sequencing, the development of a vaccine may have taken years.
Yes, it did take years, and oftentimes was unsuccessful.
Yeah, indeed. And we know that's why it did take so long to eradicate polio, other diseases as well. Now, we are seeing a mutation of COVID-19. We see the South African strain, the UK strain, and perhaps most concerning the Brazilian strain. So are you working with scientists to make changes to vaccines as we see these mutations?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And across the globe, now that we've had, millions of people infected, each time the virus enters a human, it has the opportunity to change. It's pretty good at replicating, but it makes spelling errors, right? It changes a T to a C or a G to an A, and that gets passed on. And our sequencing has done a very nice job mapping the spread of the virus across the globe using those mutations. Well, with enough time, the virus also wants to be transmissed and be more contagious, be more dangerous, and we'll see variants collect mutations that make it so. And you've mentioned the B117, that's the UK variant. That's much more transmissible and maybe more deadly. The South African variant, B1351, has a change that allows it to escape some of the neutralizing antibodies that we make to protect ourselves after having an infection, or that we make in response to vaccines. And the Brazilian variant, the P1 variant, has some of those same changes. What we're seeing in the studies, Laura, is that these variants, the Brazilian variant and the South African variant, do limit the effectiveness of some of these vaccines. Now, it's a pretty modest limitation, and the vaccines still provide a lot of protection. But those same companies, Moderna and Pfizer, are already incorporating the variants in that, like South African strain, the B1351. They have a booster under development that has the spike protein with all those changes, so that if someone is not protected by the current vaccine, there's a booster that's under active research in clinical trials that could provide that protection.
Well, Doctor, I might be moving a little bit out of your remit here, but do we need to learn to live with the virus? I mean, do we need to have the world vaccinated before we can, travel freely once again? What are the realities of the virus now? Is it ever going to be eradicated?
Yeah, I think that's quite a deep question, Laura. But I think, what we know is that SARS-CoV-2 is likely here for humanity to stay. When we get through this pandemic, right, we're not safe until we're all safe. So I heard some discussion prior to this segment about, well, why get vaccinated? Because, we can't open up. Australia has punched above its weight in reacting to this pandemic, in showing what leadership is. And there's been incredible work that scientists in Australia have done using sequencing to set it up for success, sequencing all positives and looking for the future to prevent future outbreaks of SARS-CoV-2 and future outbreaks of other pathogens that we don't know about yet. So Australia is a leader, but not all countries are as forward-looking and proactive as Australia. And so we're going to have a lot of trouble getting populations across the globe in countries that have fewer resources, less commitment to get enough vaccinations to decrease the frequency of SARS-CoV-2. And SARS-CoV-2 has shown we are a globally connected world. We know the internet connects us, but unfortunately, this germ also showed us that we're very connected in very real ways. And so we will have to learn to live with that. And I think that's why it's so important that countries like Australia are taking the proactive measures now, using our technology, not only to sequence SARS-CoV-2 and understand the variants that are in country when positive cases occur, but looking forward to be ready for future pathogens.